Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show. And then there were 8.
I hear crickets from State Farm Arena, so should I be concerned?
And last but not least, and for the culture, the W out here being so disrespectful to our girl, man. What is going on?
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to start off by saying thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. ATL Day Ones is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But T, when you think about what we talked about when the starters were named, Ronald Acuna, Sean Murphy, and Orlando Arcia, we talked about how on Sunday they were going to name some more names. There were going to probably be a significant amount of more names to be added to this roster, and we were exactly right. Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Spencer Strider, and Bryce Elder. But I think the question is, T, coming into this season, we understood the Braves were going to have a stacked lineup if they were able to remain healthy throughout the season. But did you see this many people making this all-star team to start the season at the beginning of the season coming in?
I don't see how you could, not just the number, but who. Because if you had asked me Bryce Elder, nope. If you had asked me Orlando Arcia, remember the guy who we had in the third seat behind Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemaker.
Yeah,
nope.
At some point in time, yes.
Right, exactly. No, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Not just some point in time.
Yeah.
Through the first part of this season. Let's just keep it
no
real.
doubt.
At least the first month.
Fair.
And then when he went down with his injury, then you really got concerned. But he came back all guns blazing, all respect. Bryce Elder, you're the opening day starter at AAA Gwinnett. That's where you were. So no, would not have expected those two names, just, to name a few. Now, everybody else, I think, good to go. Sean Murphy, you get him because he's the best catcher in baseball, and then he shows you the goods elsewhere. Olson, well, we kind of thought, okay, this might be a 1-for-1 at first base, and it pretty much is, because that other guy who was at first base all those years, of course, he is an all-star too, and Freddie Freeman. Ozzie Albies, I think you and I have said over and over again, we don't talk enough about Ozzie Albies. So I'm glad to see him get his third nod. And of course, Austin Riley started off slow, but just continued to grind, got back on form, and here we are. So no, the answer is never could I have seen 8, because those are Pro Bowl numbers, because you have 22 starters, right? And then you've even got guys on special teams. So 8, if you're in the NFL, sure, but Major League Baseball, that tells you just how dominant these Braves have been.
Yeah, they've been dominant. And you think about, like, one of the things that, because there's a thing that, like you said, coming into the season that we were really thinking, right? Like, we knew that this lineup was going to be super stacked, and given the pitching rotation coming to the season, which included Max Fried and Kyle Wright, obviously that's not the case. And then we've learned that, those guys have been pushed back just a little bit more, as far as August and September, respectively, is when we should see Max Fried and Kyle Wright. But like a guy like a Bryce Elder, that's one of those names that, like you said, you're the opening day starter for the Gwinnett Stripers. And Elder talked about how, it was unfortunate because he was vying for that fifth spot in the rotation, but like he stayed the course, right? He understood that, hey, I know that I belong. I just have to go get myself together in AAA. And then his opportunity came about. Now, granted, you would hope that it wouldn't come from your 20-game winner last year and your Cy Young candidate, going down. But like you said, he able to step in, in the tops in Major League Baseball in ERA with a 2.44. So those are some of the things that you look at and say, what? This is where this Braves team is as far as being able to plug and play. And then they got some young guys who've been eating up some innings as well. So I think the all-star piece is I'm not too shocked, but I am shocked the fact that you have, with all of the history that you had with the Braves starters, getting into the All-Star game together. Like the last time 2 starters from the Braves baseball team have made the All-Star team, was back in 2000. It was Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux. When you think about that now, and then the 2 that make it are Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder, you're just like, that's something that I said at the beginning of the year. If 2 starters from the Braves team were going to make it, I definitely didn't see this one coming, for sure.
Yeah, and even a month ago, most people would have told you Spencer Strider, that's a joke, because when he had those 2 losses, I mean, people, like, they were hair on fire with it. And it's like, okay, right. But now we're talking about 10 wins, and he's at the top of the heap as one of the only 3 pitchers in the National League with double-digit wins. So that is astounding. And going back to one thing you said about Fried and Wright, the reason that the Braves can comfortably push them back to August and September is not only because of what Strider's able to do and Elder's able to do, but also what Charlie Morton continues to do.
Yeah, Charlie Morton is a guy that, we talking about being able to grind things out. Like, he's the guy that he's the epitome of that, grinding things out and getting to the point where you are, hey, we know that he's not going to be great, like in a dominating type of situation. But I think that, what he brings to the table and the experience that he has, I think he's somebody that the Braves are going to have to lean on at some point during this season. And I feel like he's been able to do that. Also, the Braves did win a series over the weekend. They swept the Marlins, and to be honest with you, I'm gonna ask you, were you surprised? But I think Charlie Morton wanted to chime in before
Guys
that.
in that room,
well.
I really don't think that they know what's going on. I just think that they're like, we're pros, we're good dudes, like we care about each other, and we go out and play. And that's what I'm seeing. They're all pulling for each other. They're all supportive of each other. They're extremely positive and relaxed. They're really humble for how good they are. For me to be in that clubhouse, I feel so spoiled. It's kind of surreal, actually. It's like such a good group of dudes that are so good. For me, it's a really special time in my career just to watch what they're doing and to watch the quality of people that are in that room.
And spoiled, surprised, and surreal. Spoiled, yes. Surreal, yes. Surprised, no.
Yeah.
Spoiled because it continues to be an embarrassment of riches. I mean, how many superlatives can you give? Every time you think you have given the most superlatives, they come up with something else. The 21-4 record, right? Yeah. That's one thing. Plus 71 differential in runs in the month of June. That's another thing. Mm-hmm. You go back to, of course, the 8 All-Stars. You could just run it down. You mowed down. Like, you didn't just beat the Marlins. After the first game, Jarvis, I almost texted you because Friday, we asked the question of who was this series most important for. And I still stick with my rationale for why I thought it was most important for the Braves. But I think that the point that you made was even better because it's the Marlins looking up thinking, hey, this is our opportunity to show that we're not just a team that's 3.5 games back, but we're going to mow you down. And at the end of this series, we could be at the top of the heap. You are anything but. You are 9 games out. And then what is it with the Phillies? 13, and with the Mets, 18.5?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. But again, not surprised because as the Mets continue to implode, as the Phillies kind of go up and down here and there, and as the Marlins get brought down to earth by the Braves, I'm like, I'm not surprised. This is, in fact, Jarvis, here's a great stat as well that tells you why not to be surprised. This is the third 8-win streak for the Braves this season. And then when you look at that June clip, you can look at some of those games, the 23 to 26. You can look at some of those games, about a little over half, that were played with teams that are subpar, probably not going to make it to the postseason, if you will, right? But 12 of those games were played with against teams that will make it to the postseason. And the Braves didn't just beat them. The Braves dominated most of them.
Yeah. And like I said, coming into this series, I said it earlier and last week, I was just like, this is not a big series for the Braves. This is more important for the Marlins because the Braves are going to do what they've been doing. They've been kicking the crap out of everybody, like I said, and now they almost have a double-digit lead in the NL East. Now, T, you said you want to give somebody some flowers, so I definitely have to open up the floor for that because that's what we do on this show right here.
Yeah, I mean, we always like to give credit just as we give criticism, but credit is always given on this show to Alex Anthopoulos and Brian Snicker. Yes. But when you look at the infield and the fact that 4 infielders are all-stars, I love what Ozzie Albies did. He gave the flowers to Ron Washington. So I want to give flowers to Uncle Ron as well, because he said to Ozzie post-game that may have been the most emotional time for him, maybe the best he can think of, because that speaks to just how much. Remember, Jarvis, how we talked about Austin Riley and he was hitting for power when he came up from the minors, and then all of a sudden he just fell off because pitchers had figured him out. Ron Washington got him back on track. And you could have that conversation, not just about his infield, but really anybody, but that speaks to what he's been able to do. And then I'm going back to what you said. No Max Fried, no Kyle Wright. Rick Kranitz gets this entire pitching staff all the way together. Ups, downs, ins, outs with the bullpen. Somehow they just get it done. So I just wanted to give those guys flowers because we don't talk enough about Ron Washington. We don't talk enough about Rick Kranitz, but we will today.
Absolutely. And Rick Kranitz is the type of guy who would probably be like, you don't have to mention my name. I'm cool.
Right.
He's just that type of guy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's the cool part about this whole thing, this organization as a whole, because it's just so many key pieces that as to a reason why this team is playing the way they're playing. It's not just the players and the coaches. It's some of those people behind the scenes that are making them moving and shaking, just to make sure everybody's doing what they need to do. Now, speaking of doing what they need to do, I don't think the Hawks are doing what they need to do, T. I have a sneaky suspicion that, the Hawks, we're going to talk about it. That's coming up next. But first, I got to let you know that this episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is the #1 sportsbook in America, folks. Guess what? They have the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 for all the people who have not, joined. If you haven't joined, what are you waiting on? So go ahead and go over there. Say, hey, I'm a new customer. What can I do? What can I take advantage of? You can take advantage of the no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Guess what, guys? It is safe. It's secure. It's super easy to use. And all you have to do is just go to the website, FanDuel.com. Because also, you don't have to wait around for your money either. As soon as you win that bet, that baby cash is out right then and there. So there's no wait. So all you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's how you can support the show. FanDuel.com/lockedon. To learn more, make every moment more with FanDuel. It's official sportsbook betting partner of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball copyrights are used with permission.
Make sure that you actually bet on the Braves. That's probably your better bet. Wouldn't bet on the Hawks as far as will they make a bold move this offseason or will they not? Because I think it's really something to where it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. We really don't. I mean, we understand what they're doing, kind of, sort of, because we have said that we think we would probably land at a reset versus a rebuild. But it certainly doesn't appear that it's kind of moving boldly to be able to compete with the likes of what else is going on. So I looked up something that's really essentially all the free agency moves in the first 3 days, going back to June 30th. Right. And when you look at those dates, when you look at those dates, it's crazy. And not just the dates, Jarvis, but it's the people and the kind of moves that they're making. Like when you look at, for example, and I'm going to go kind of low to high, if you will, but Mo Wagner, he signs his 2-year deal with Orlando, like right out of the gates, right? So it's like, okay, fine. That's one of the guys who you might have thought maybe would come this way. Not so much as far as, a center replacement. And then you continue to look at the moves that are made, and Jock Landale goes to the Rockets. That's another name you've heard. 4-year deal with them. Jay Crowder picks up a 1-year contract with the Bucks. That was another name of somebody who, hey, maybe kind of sort of would he? No. Max Drew said, you know what? Although we don't play the same position, If Dame Lillard is going to South Beach, I'm going to Cleveland. And it just goes on and on and on. All of these players that, are making these moves that maybe make your head like a little bit of a head scratcher, right? Because these are all guys, as an example, who had been either reported to possibly be coming here or were postulated to possibly be coming here. So all of that said, and that's not even the whole list, right? But if you think the lack of the moves to start a sign that the Hawks may stand pat, let me know why. Because, hey, we're only a couple days in. We do recognize that it could blow up and boom, they could go and make some big moves. But right now, are the lack of moves to start this free agency period a sign to you that they're standing pat? Yes or no?
I think it's a yes. I'm leaning towards yes because here's the thing. Like, we all understand why John Collins was traded. Like,
yes,
I thought the reason that John Collins should have been traded in my mind is because I feel like he has maximized what he can do for this team with this roster, with this coach going forward.
Yes.
But I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Hawks traded him. But I think the other reason to add to that is, hey, we're trying to stay away from words like apron. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what the Hawks are trying to stay away from, that doggone luxury tax, because guess what? Here's the thing, team. Like, some of those moves that you talk about, right? We understand who the contenders are because those were some of the teams that were probably the most busy. I feel like the Lakers have done a tremendous job as to making sure that Bron them going to have to play 82 games or 65 games or 70 games. You can probably take some games off because you have guys that can come in and fill in and do what they need to do and still win games as they go along. But but the Lakers are contenders, right? We talked about the Miami Heat. They reportedly are going to try to pursue Dame Lillard. We know Miami Heat, that's contender. And but when we think about, teams like the, I say Orlando Magic, those teams are they're still rebuilding, right? They got a lot of young talent, but they still kind of on the rebuild phase, right? So I know what they are. Like, what are the Hawks? This is why I feel like the Hawks are going to stand pat, because I don't know what they are. Because I can't say they're contenders, but I can't say they're fully, rebuilding for the future, because they have guys and money, contracts and fat contracts and people getting paid. So when you're in the middle, that's when I really feel like, hey, you're going to have to figure out a way to stand pat. That's why you bring in a guy like Quin Snyder. Like, hey, here's a group of guys that, pretty good. We got some guys with some superstar potential. And we got some guys that, hey, they just need a little bit more coaching so they can kind of establish themselves and what role they're going to have going forward. That's where you look for the upgrade. And that's why I feel like, the upgrade is not necessarily going to be from a big, bold move, but I feel like it's going to be from the upgrade that you have from a coaching standpoint in Quin Snyder.
Yeah, that could be true. And I would agree with you. I don't know that they're going to make a big splash because, word is they went after Ty Washington and Usman Garuba. We know that they gave Harrison Matthews the 1-year deal. Yeah. So when we look at those situations, those are all essentially
subtle
power. Exactly. Very subtle. Right. To get your backups at the forward position, because you're probably going to give that opportunity to Sadiq Bey or Jalen Johnson to get that starting role, if you will. So to me, it looks like we had mentioned a little bit last week, that maybe they do have confidence that they have someone in-house who can take on that forward position. And maybe they're just going to stand pat at 3 and 5. But I think for me, what just kind of makes it uncomfortable is what you just talked about. Like, it makes sense to me, all the moves that the Lakers made, right? Even the Suns have been actually very active too. Last person, of course, that they reportedly are signing is Eric Gordon. So I'm looking at those teams and but then Jarvis, this is what concerns me a little bit. The Hornets gave Miles Bridges a qualifying offer, albeit a 1-year deal, not much, less than $7 million, right? But they're at least saying that we think that he's going to be a part of making us competitive, right? And so, hey, we'll go out and we'll just make sure that we can at least secure him. When I see moves like that, or I see something like, a Jordan Clarkson to the Utah Jazz, and of course they believe that there's going to be something good coming with John Collins, I think that's where I start to get a little bit concerned, because those teams, and I know, the Jazz are on the other side, so let me just focus on the Hornets being on the East. It's that middling group. The middling group keeps getting better. And the middling group actually, either better or okay with a rebuild. So they know who they are. Right. And that, I think, is the concern for me, because when you look at Hornets or you look at the Raptors, all of those teams that were bottom of the barrel, and we know the Heat were in the weird place, number 8. We know that was just an anomaly. Right. But if you look at where the rest of those teams are and some of the moves that they have made so far, either in, retaining talent or securing talent, that I think is where I get concerned, because Brooklyn made some quiet moves this offseason, but they're going to potentially pay off. The Bulls made a move or two. The Raptors, I think they're just saying, scrap it. We're just going to reset ourselves. The Pacers, the Pacers are doing some solid things as well. So that's my biggest concern, Jarvis. And that's one of the reasons I don't know that I think they're going to make a bold move, because I just feel like the teams around them hovering in that 6-10, 8-12 spot in the East, they all kind of have already made moves, or, to your point, identified themselves as an obviously rebuilding team. But that said, we hope that that's not the case, because, if the Raptors are rebuilding, they still have some pieces you can go and get. And those pieces aren't all expensive, but if you bring them here, somehow upgrade your team immediately.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up the Raptors, because, hey, there were some reports that, the Hawks are still inquiring about Pascal Siakam. And he only has 1 year one year left on his contract. So,
and he is a couple million lower than Clint Capella. You save $3 million. So and you have a younger player. So, no, you're absolutely right. So, right now we're saying no, but we certainly hope that tomorrow or someday during this week that we can go, well, not tomorrow because we're off too, but Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we can go, we were wrong and we love it. This is the reason you want to be wrong. But everydayers, what do you guys think? Hawks were quiet this weekend, but do you believe that they actually will be bold enough to make that kind of move? And what do you think about the Braves? Man, oh man, I'm sure you guys have some superlative or some little niche of a nugget that we just missed out on. Let us know. Drop it in the comments on YouTube, but don't forget as well that this is the podcast where you get all your ATL info, all the downloads on sports. So download us wherever you get your podcasts.
But T, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, the culture, and sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about. Because that's just how we get down on this show. Today is no different. T, when you think about, when Rhyne Howard came in, all the hoopla and everything, and she was drafted, and I was just like, your number 1 overall pick, and I'm just like, yes, this girl can get buckets. Because, I was like, man, people don't. There is some growing intrigue about the WNBA. Now it's got its own nickname, the W, but when they named the AllStars, T, just all those things I just named, right? Rhyne Howard actually living up to being the number 1 overall pick. The W starting to get a little bit more, eyeballs on it. And she been hooping, and to the tune of, she dropped 43 points on everybody, and against the Sparks, in a rout against the Sparks, and broke a franchise record for points in the first half with 25, T. And I'm naming all of these things, and she didn't make the All-Star team. Please tell me why this young lady did not make the All-Star team. Please tell me you have a great reason as to why she didn't make this All-Star team this year.
I have no idea. I've been scratching my head, and I think Tanisha Wright, the coach, has scratched her head as well, because I think she's trying to figure it out. And she literally said in her opening statement, like, she does not pull any punches. And her opening statement was about 5 or 6 words. Rhyne Howard is an All-Star. And then she paused and she said, open for questions. I was like, wow. That's her. She was like, period. Like, that, end of story. We're not having a conversation about this. And I think the reason she said that is because, she feels just as like dumbfounded as the rest of us feel. And don't get me wrong, Alicia Gray, very, very worthy of getting that All-Star reserve nod. Cheyenne Parker, no question, having the best career of the best season rather of her career in the WNBA. But for the W to think that Rhyne Howard, who's showing why she went number 1 in last year's draft, but like you said, is someone also that at the end of the day, she dropped 43. She had 6 threes that she made. That's ridiculous. 70% from the field in one game. And she did that. Why? Because they made her mad. They made her mad. So, I think that you might, when you have the opportunity to maybe plug in some people because this player is injured or that player is not able to make it, she might want to be the first call you make.
Absolutely. She definitely should be in that bad boy because, at the end of the day, like, gonna try to see if I can be, play a little devil advocate on this piece. Like maybe because they're in the 5th spot in the Eastern Conference,
Yeah,
4 games
yeah.
behind the New York Liberty, who's in the number 1 spot in the East. So that maybe
But
has some reason to it. But I guess
the Mystics are under 500. They're one of 4 teams. And amazingly, EDD, Brittany Sykes, Shakira Austin's injured. And, anywho, I just say that to say, like, sometimes I think that I know what it is. Now that I've been in Atlanta for so long, sometimes I feel disrespected just like y'all.
Yes.
I feel bad. Like,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I got a little chip now that I've been in you guys' spaces and places for so long. The end.
The end, indeed. Now, we just talked about Rhyne Howard being disrespected, playing for a professional team in Atlanta. We used to that from the national media. But like, this probably is the only time that I'm going to give the city of New Orleans some love. Because guess what?
Man.
That boy Juvie, yeah, I said it like that. That boy Juvie over there on Tiny Desk. Oh, my goodness. First of all, did you check it out? And secondly, like, I don't know about you, but for me, this kind of brought back memories. Like, I literally went back to the times of all that music, and I was just like, man, I remember when I was doing this, and I remember when I was doing that. And I was like, oh, my God, like, this was some good times when this music came out. But, yeah, shout out to Juvie for putting it down on Tiny Desk, T.
Oh, yeah, it's funny because he didn't even know what Tiny Desk was. Let's start right there. And somebody was like, Juvie for Tiny Desk. And he was like, Tiny Desk, what's that? Anybody gonna tell me?
What it?
Yeah. What that is. So he literally was like, oh, but I'll do it. That's what I love about gamesman, just like Jeezy, being able to play with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. The reason I'm saying that is because 50 years in hip hop, and look at the versatility, right?
Yes.
So I really, really love that he came in, and Juvenile didn't just come by himself, right? He brought Manny Fresh, who is like the one of the top producers ever in hip hop. Let's just give him that. And then he also brought Trombone Shorty, who is a Grammy Award winner, John Batiste, another Grammy Award winner. So that he would have a live band acoustic feel to it. And he brought 2 singers in as well. Yeah. So I just love all of what he tried to do in that Tiny Desk, and even appeasing the crowd by doing Back That Thing Up, not once but twice. So yeah. Now, of course, I was sad because he didn't like do one of my favorite songs. He did Slow Motion, I think, but he didn't do. He did that. He didn't do Bounce Back. But Juvie the Great is my favorite album from him. But he gave everything to the point where I called one of my homecoming chairs and said, "So how much is it going to take for us to get Juvie for homecoming?"
Wow. Like seriously, T. Like when you think about I even think about I remember when that joint dropped. And
like, what is it?
New Yorkers like, what is that? What is all that foolishness? Yeah. But being from the South,
2 years to play it, by the way.
Yeah,
2 whole years before they played it.
Which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way. When you listen to the wordplay, because when you have the acoustic sound, you kind of hear the lyrics a little bit. You hear the lyrics a little bit better, or they highlight it more. Let me say that.
Yes.
And I think that you just kind of hear the wordplay, hear the story. We talked about the stories in hip hop and how rappers tell stories as they go along, and it was just like dope just to be able to hear what he was speaking on from at that time. And I was just like, man, this is like just prime, just like really good music. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was so localized back then because everybody was repping where they were from. Nowadays you don't know where nobody from. When you think about hip hop, it's like, is he from Atlanta? Or people just assume they're from Atlanta. Oh yeah, he's from Atlanta. Like, no, he's not. But hey, that's what we're gonna go with. You know what I'm saying? But I think that back then everybody was repping where they were from, and you just hear the lingo and the dialect and all that stuff. It was just so cool. And then just Manny Fresh. Can I just speak on Manny for a little bit? And you could tell, like, he came up with all of those ad-libs. Those weren't, like, sounds that were, produced. Like, he literally made those ad-libs and those sound effects himself. He was like, oh. I was like, he made that sound? I was like, how the heck did he do that? It just goes to show you, like, he just has an ear for music, and the talent is just oozing out of his pores. You know, when you think
it's
about just
crazy.
the things that he was able to do with big timers and Cash Money and Juvie and
Jeezy,
Wayne,
you know, and expanding and starting to go into those other markets. And
yes,
you know a Manny song when you hear it.
absolutely,
You know a Manny when you hear
absolutely.
it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that too, bringing Manny in there, because I think that was also an ode to the guy who underwrote, you know, putting bounce music on the map and kind of putting New Orleans on the map after, you know, of course, Master P did his thing in No Limit. But
Of course,
ultimately speaking, yeah. But anyway, guys, you should check out that Tiny Desk. It is cool, even though he didn't, you know, do my bounce back song. You can go check that out on YouTube because he tells a powerful story in that song as well. But yeah, he reminded you of just how much of a lyrical genius he is. Underrated. But you know who's not underrated? The Braves, as they go in and take on a sub 500 Guardians team, and they are going to wrap up just before the All-Star break with 6 games on the road. Starting tonight, Bryce Elder is on the bump. So you know what to do. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk Braves and hopefully maybe kind of some Hawks moves. We hope so. But if you come back, then you'll know whether or not we talk about it.
And last but not least, make sure you guys do, if you don't do anything, make sure you enjoy the holiday, be safe, and share love, show love, and most importantly, spread love. See y'all on Wednesday.
Wednesday.